So Seema, right now your field work is done in Guwahati, around Guwahati or Kaziranga? Or?
Kaziranga, my whole PhD as well as my fieldwork. Before my PhD, everything is related in Kaziranga. My
Okay.
project as well, that the elephant acoustic project that I started, it's in Kaziranga. But I do work in other landscapes on like sporadic basis, depends on what work is there. Like as we spoke about the railway collision that's happening. So that work was based in North Bengal kind of work. So mostly elephants in the northeast of India, I work on that.
So are you familiar with, you must be with Dr. Lahiri Chaudhary.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
I had the opportunity to meet him several years back when we
Oh,
were talking about elephant corridors in here around here. So I was at a WWF meeting and I had met him, and it was nice meeting him back then. Do you know Christy Williams from WII, Wildlife Institute of India?
he's in WWF now, no?
He is in WWF right now, but when he was a student in WII, Christy, I knew him.
Okay.
He had worked on corridor elephants, migratory elephants between
He
trans.
worked in Uttarakhand. He did work in Uttarakhand. I read his book recently. He just published one of his book. I don't remember the name of it, but yeah. So he did publish. Yeah, I know him well. Now he
Okay,
works,
very good.
yeah, or he works in the South Asian countries. He does not work in India. That's what I know.
I mean, again, these are things that were
Wildlife
tens
circuit
of
is
years
so
back.
small. Wildlife circuit is so small. Everybody knows it.
It's small. Everybody knows everybody else. You're right. So, Subham, briefly, I think we have just a couple minutes before it starts.
Yeah.
So, right now, what are you working on, principal? I mean, I would really like to carry this forward, even after this, just to know each other well, because I
Yeah.
hardly have had the opportunity.
So I'm working as an AIDS ecological researcher in Balipara Foundation. So I am leading the science team here, and I'm overseeing the biodiversity assessments and the science projects that Balipara Foundation takes up. So currently, I'm working on that.
Excellent. Excellent. A big shoe to fill. It's a nice thing to do, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, Joydeep, just a question. Most of the technology you use is GIS based, correct? Because you do plant related climate action kind of work. So, what I understood is mostly, or do you also do acoustic monitoring or camera traps and all of that?
Except camera traps, Seema, I think I have ventured, into everything possible. Sorry to say that, but yeah, I think I've worked on GIS, but my focus right now has been drone technology, drones.
Oh, nice.
So yeah,
Nice.
so a lot of ground truthing using drones, and the whole concept of ground truthing has changed now from what we did in the past to now.
Yes.
So just
Right.
using those. So I'm really not a truly remote sensing person.
Okay.
I like to call what we do more like near surface, because we fly the drones very close. I always challenge my remote GIS colleagues by saying ours is really nice. It's fine grained. It's really nice, and they just say that theirs is more coarse grained but better. So there's always an argument on each side.
So what sensors do you use in your drones? So is it
Sorry, say
only the
that again.
imagery or yeah? So I would just wanted to know what sensors do you use in your drones? Is it just the
Great
imagery
question.
or thermal sensors or?
I've got multiple. So I've got a lidar drone. I've
Mhm.
got a thermal drone. I've got several RGB drones. I've got a
Mhm.
multispectral drone, and I've got a
Wow.
hyperspectral drone, and I've got a drone that lands in water and does water analysis. I mean, it brings back samples. So ventured into multiple things, Shubham, to be
Really
honest.
fascinating work that you're doing.
Oh, I enjoy it. It's fun. It's like playing with new toys every day, I guess.
Yeah, I really wanted to work with the lidars. So
It's phenomenal.
it's
It's a
really
game changer.
yeah.
I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It's a game changer.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back on another dialogue on Nature Economics Digital Dialogues 5.0. Nature economics, the word in itself means where ecology and economy can thrive together. Today, we are going to delve into the theme of Back to Green Basics, where we talk about conservation, land, forest, water, and how communities and youth play a significant role in conserving and preserving. The idea is to relook at these elements and to have them represented in the larger narrative of driving climate action in the Eastern Himalayas, to be specific. Without further ado, let me introduce you to today's panel and our main topic of discussion that will talk about technology for conservation. We have known that technology in its different means and formats have taken over the world. There is speculation around AI eating over humankind or replacing the humankind. There is also a positive narrative around technology or AI or other functions of technology making life easier for us. Now, in this world of contradictions, raised eyebrows, let's talk about how technology plays a critical role in conservation efforts. Let me start by introducing our panelists and invite them to speak a little bit about themselves. So let's start with Dr. Joydeep Bhattacharya. Sir, it would be nice if you can let us know how your journey has been in the environmental realm and, the kind of work that you have dabbled with so far.
Thank you so much, Reva. And so I'm Dr. Joydeep Bhattacharya. I'm basically an ecologist by training. I'm a professor at the School of Sciences at the University of Louisiana, Monroe, US. And along with my students, I have been looking at multiple things. I always say ecologists are jack of all trades and master of some. So I look at carbon sequestration. So I've got a 120-foot tower in the middle of a forest that is monitoring, that has got a infrared gas analyzer, and it monitors exchange of carbon dioxide between the forest and the atmosphere at a landscape level. I also have looked into exchange of water vapor, because with climate change coming in and with erratic climate patterns, we're also looking at how have the dynamics of water transport between the atmosphere and trees changed over time. And then, my research has also morphed or evolved as time went on. So currently, I've been using a lot of AI and ML, both artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning techniques, especially to evaluate the impact of climate change on forest, like stress detection. Can we detect stress in forests? Can we look at canopy health? Is there a disease that is rampant that we can detect earlier than we can visually do? And then, of course, I don't know if it's much of a problem in India, but invasive species tend to be a big problem in the US. And so I'm also looking into how the invasive species kind of ingressing or taking over natural habitats. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at in the US. And over the past several years, I've also done a little bit of research with my colleagues here at A3 Northeast office. And there I've looked into looking at the Tista River. So the Tista River has flooded. So I've looked into the riparian corridor and the damage that the damming has caused. Several dams were built in short distances. So I brought my students from the US, and for 2 years, over the summer, we carried out a very nice collaborative research. Again, we used sonar technology to map out the bottom of the Tista River. So these are some of the things that I've been doing as a faculty.
That's lovely to know, and I'm sure that the youth will get inspired by the kind of experiments and conclusions that you will draw with the integration of technology when it comes to conservation efforts. Ms. Seema Lokhandwala, I would request you to introduce yourselves and your realm of work.
Thank you, Reva, and thank you, Balipara Foundation, for the opportunity, first of all. So I'm Seema Lokhandwala. I work in the northeast of India, mostly on looking at elephant conservation. I started my journey as an engineer, and I've moved towards completely an elephant biologist. And mostly it's been a fascinating journey, because when anybody joins the field of wildlife, they are always very enthused about, oh, save the elephants, do this, do that, like the big slogans that we hear. And what is missing from all of these are communities, because they are the actual role players. They are the one who are going to be a part and parcel of whatever technology that you build or whatever in the world that you build. Until and unless they're not going to accept it, what solutions are you providing, nothing works out. So that was like a big learning for anybody who calls themselves as an ecologist or any of those conservationists and all of that, and moving to the journey from, in some ways, in your head also, we all start as forest conservationists, like somebody who wants to protect wildlife within the lands, within protected areas, and then move towards community conservation. And that's been my journey as well. And mostly now I look at how technology, and in particular acoustic as a medium, can be used at mitigating human-wildlife conflict, at least in the northeast of India. Thank you.
Great. And last but not the least, we have a very interesting panelist, Mr. Shubham as well joining us. And Shubham, would you like to talk about your area of expertise and research? And recently, we knew that you'd been making some efforts in the flood-ridden areas of Assam as well. So, how does your observations look like right now?
Thank you, Reva. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Shubham, and I have done my PhD in environmental science from the Department of Environmental Science in Tezpur University. So, currently, I am working as an ace ecological researcher in Balipara Foundation, and I'm primarily working on the biodiversity research that has been going in and around the project sites at Balipara Foundation. So basically, we look upon the various aspects of biodiversity that includes the mammalian diversity, the tree community structure, herpetofauna, the avifauna, and obviously the insect. So basically, we are working on these aspects, and also we work on different projects that are being taken up by the foundation. Suppose as such as the carbon stock assessment and everything else that's currently I'm working on.
Great. Coming from your experiences, Shubham, how did you get into this particular space? And how has your journey been so far? What challenges do you think you've faced as a researcher, as an academician? And do you think that there is any gap when it comes to the academia and the actual on-ground, execution of projects? Because you've dabbled with both the spaces. So, yeah.
Because as we know, the academics is really focused on the academic point of from the academic point of view. The strings are very on the over the top. Like, I'm not saying that it's not impactful; it is impactful, but most of them are impactful in the long run, right? But coming to the Balipara Foundation, I have seen that the ground reality of those of the impact that we make. Like, we are working with communities, we are working with the people, we are working on actual landscapes to restore the habitats. And I find the research done by the academician very helpful. But on the other hand, sometimes working with the communities, those research will help you up to an extent only. And after that, you are on your own. You are working with the communities
That's
to
right.
to restore the habitats so that the work can actually be done in the ground. And regarding the challenges, yes, there are little challenges that we face. At me, when I work on field with the communities, there are certain challenges that needs to be addressed, which I'm going to be talking in
Do you
the.
face
Uh,
resistance from the communities? Like, there can be maths and there can be numbers and there can be data. But, when you go and when you speak to people, do they see you as an outsider? Do they see you as one of them? And for people who are not very privy with the Eastern Himalayan region, how does the culture look like? And what are people's reactions to change, especially when you're trying to introduce a new concept?
Yeah, definitely. I must say that most of the communities, as I said, most of the communities are very helpful. They are very understanding with the approach that we are taking. And so that firstly we do the mobilization of the communities, in which we make them understand that what are we actually planning to do here and how it will benefit them. But at some point of time, I must also say that there are some communities which may find it difficult to have an outsider into their villages or in their landscapes to so as to modify the kind of living they are doing in their community. So sometimes, yes, we face resistance, but once we talk to them, once we get to know them, once we let them know that what are we doing precisely, I think all of the communities are very understanding, and they finally eventually accept and also integrate those systems of type of living that we are trying to promote.
Dr. Joydeep, I would like to bring you in over here and hear your comments also on the same question. How do you think we can try to act or bridge this gap between local communities and technological changes which are rapidly taking over? How do we introduce such concepts? How do we bring in this sort of agility in an already existing ecosystem that has been going on for years?
Yeah, thanks so much, Riva, for passing the question along. I think, as Subham mentioned, even in my own work, I have seen this because, and in this day and age, we are really flooded with technological innovations, all around us. And even in our field of conservation, there has been leaps in the type of technology we use just to benefit conservation. However, in doing so, what I've realized is oftentimes we get siloed or tunneled, and then it's something that I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm so familiar with it, and then when I'm at the implementation stage, or I'm talking to the stakeholders, and in my case, when I'm talking to the forest department or the fish and wildlife agencies, it is really that line to cross over. And I think the onus lies on us because I think it's a well argued fact that scientists are great writers but poor communicators when it comes to oral communications. So I think I think I also succumb to that. So what we have been trying is we have been having more stakeholder meetings and saying, hey, look, here is what we have already done. Here is what we are seeing. And a good thing, at least in the US, is that the policymakers, at least at the state level, are very receptive. So technically, they will ask us, okay, where have you done this research? And oftentimes we work in their lands, which are public lands. So we'll work on their lands and then just show them the results. And then, as a matter of fact, from my end, I think the resistance has been very minimum. And I don't think it's really a matter of resistance. I think it's a matter of communicating. We have to really unscience
Right.
ourselves and then communicate the matter so that the stakeholders or the local policyholders it becomes more palatable for them.
Right, right. Seema, any comments on the same question? We've talked about technology, we've talked about people. What about, wildlife? And how do you see different ecosystems evolving over time and adapting to newer technology? How difficult or how easy is it for you to be working with tech in one hand and issues around conservation and wildlife in the other?
Thank you, Reva, for the question. So I might have a little like a side point of view from both Shubham and Joydeep. So for us, when we work in the wildlife
Sure.
sector and as well as communities, the first and
Right.
foremost, I'm of that opinion that the technology from the inception science, because I'm into the development of technology, the communities have to be part of it. From the inception itself, the communities have to be part of it. Not in the end, they become the custodian of the technology that you want to develop. I'm not of the opinion that you develop a technology and you say, okay, this works great for us, this works fine for us, it should work fine for you as well. Because these technologies work in different landscapes. And let's say what might work in Kaziranga, that landscape might not work in Manas itself, even if it's just 100 kilometers away, even if it's just 200 kilometers away, like very small distance also, because communities changes, culture changes. And in Assam, because not just in Assam, in the whole Northeast, as is this amalgamation of different tribal communities, different religion, all together coming together with
Right.
different cultural traditions that they have. So when you say a blanket one technology or a blanket one thing,
That might not work.
it might not work. Hence, every community is different, and to understand their needs is what I come into pitch. I really want to do that and develop technology based on their requirements. Like in certain cases, there is human elephant conflict higher. In certain places,
Right. That's true.
there is human wild boar conflict much higher. So the technology, the kind of answers that you're looking for, or the kind of solutions that you're looking for will be different. So it depends on the landscape, very small landscapes. And that's one of the reasons I feel that most NGOs now are understanding this, that work in the landscape and do depth work within the landscape rather than looking at just on the zoomer level. And that's what I think even Balipara Foundation is trying to do in one particular landscape, get into as much detail as possible, work with the communities, building trust with the communities. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Tina, I think you've raised a very interesting point. You're of the opinion that we should work with a very customized sort of solution because, the communities will change, the topography will change, maybe the habits of wildlife will change over, say 100 kilometers or so. Dr. Joydeep, in your working in the US and in India, taking a cue from here, how do you think we can build certain technologies or ecosystems or procedures that can be a little more universal in nature? And Seema, you can bring in again, your viewpoint of how there is a need felt for a true level of customization and customized solutions, at least when it comes to conservation. I think it would be lovely to have you and Dr. Joydeep engage in a dialogue looking at this from a global and a local lens, especially when it comes to adapting this sort of technology.
Right, right. Thank you. So I think what Seema was mentioning is very true when it comes to different landscapes in terms of the ecosystems and all of that. That really there is no one size fits all. So I totally agree with that. But in the US, what we're doing is I'm really kind of bridging between developing technologies in my lab and then testing it in a forest and then upscaling. I think the most important thing that is a bottleneck for scientists such as all of us is that there's always a bottleneck that seems to be hindering transfer of technology from the ones who develop to the ones who actually use it. So to circumvent the issue or to kind of ease the issue, what we have been doing is we have been using our test sites and then upscaling. And then typically when we upscale, for example, I really don't care about how much or how I derived a number. I just say, look, I used a technology, I use a certain type of a drone and a sensor, and looks like your forest has, let's say, 32 species of tree species, canopy species. So what we do is we follow it up with ground truthing, because still I think, and it is very befitting with the theme. And I appreciate the organizers of this panel discussion that is back to green basics, because that is so important. We might be talking a lot of things using drones, but at the end of the day, how good is our data that we collect based on the ground truthing? So I think a lot of the people that are, I'm talking to foresters, local stakeholders, they always want to know, okay, how does this number translate to when they're doing the traditional methods, like when you're doing a forest inventory, in my case. So by doing that, I think we're able to kind of ease the bottleneck out a little bit. And then these days, I think, at least in the areas that I work, drones nowadays, it's global. Everybody uses drones, even kids fly drones. So it's become so ubiquitous. So I think getting the idea across that, hey, just using a simple basic drone, we can derive way more than what we can with boots on the ground. So I guess our biggest tool is just doing something in our lingo, the scientific lingo, and then really translating it in a very non-science manner so that they understand that, okay, I understand these numbers, I understand these variables, it makes sense. Let's do it. So that is how
Great.
we have been working in my lab.
Great, that's interesting. Seema, how do you see what Dr. Joydeep said translating to very basic terminologies, to very basic things, to very day-to-day stuff within the communities, so that it does not look very intrusive? And Shubham, then I would like to bring you in to talk about how organizations on ground, NGOs, policymakers, government stakeholders can play a pivotal role when it comes to the adoption of such technology, or making it easier for somebody coming in with a scientific background or temperament, trying to experiment or trying to introduce a solution. So to Ms. Seema and then to Dr. Shubham.
What Jaideep was saying is completely agreeable. This is what everybody should do, is transferring science knowledge, whatever we think as science knowledge is, scientific knowledge to that extent, to a audience that can completely grasp it. I completely agree on that point, and I do think that that's how it should be done. It's also the only part that I come into picture is saying that there is always also some knowledge that is there within the communities. That is the traditional ecological knowledge, or whatever you call it to be. And that integration, if you try and do it while developing the technology itself, it's like going back and forth. Like, you have some scientific knowledge, they have this local traditional ecological knowledge. Integrate both of it in such a way that both of us benefits, not just us or not just them. It's just a kind of like a holistic approach at looking at things. So that's what I was trying to get at, that when we're trying, that's when I said that the communities have to be part from the inception side of what you're trying to develop as a technology. Because sometimes it can be any technology, let's say, even if it's drone technology or even any of the technology that you can build on. If you're trying to solve issue, and the communities might have some ecological knowledge regarding it or some typical knowledge regarding it. It can be any knowledge in that matter of fact, but how you integrate it into while you're developing that technology can play a good role, or it can help you develop the technology better. That's what my understanding is.
Interesting. And Shubham, how do you think institutions, formal or informal, organized, unorganized, government, private, or, on the social sector side, can play a role and help us reach some sort of consensus as to what Dr. Joydeep and Seema has been happening for and what they're trying to say? Like, it's all bad to have technology. It's great to have it, but have your traditional knowledge add their 2 cents to what is being built and what is coming back to them as the final product. So, how do you think, volunteers, private organizations, government organizations can play a crucial role and translate the knowledge and ensure that there's a communication flow from both the ends?
From the government, from the private sector, from the NGOs. First of all, we need to address that there are certain challenges that is currently ongoing, going on into the introduction of technologies in any conservation areas or any areas that we need to study. For example, there are a lot of barriers when we want to study in a restricted forest area or in a national park, right? So from that perspective, the second thing is the timeline. Let's say we have reports of one species there, and that is migratory. And during the process of getting the proper permission from the authorities, it gets delayed, and the species may move to another area, and the study becomes irrelevant for that. Second of all, regarding the private partners, which we are working with or potentially work the stakeholders need to understand that the cost of these technologies are way too high, and the initial investment required for introducing those technologies is high, and also initially the results are pretty not up to the expectations. Sometimes it's because of the geographical barriers that we have, the climatic barriers that we have, like the flood that is going on in the in Assam and in the northeastern India. And during and in this process, a huge fund is required, and the funding that we need is for a sustainable period. You can't see the impact of a plantation in mere 2 years or 3 years. It takes a time. And for the private partners, continuous funding and sustainable funding is necessary. And I would also like to mention the monitoring aspect, because without proper monitoring, it becomes harder for them also to keep on the funding sustained, right? So the cost is the issue. And also from the institution's point of view, we need to establish more knowledge partners with the institutes like universities, right? The work like A3, the research that is the kind of research A3 is doing, the kind of work A3 is doing, and other institutes as well. And also the sharing of the knowledge is also becomes crucial because let's say the we all know that sharing of data is crucial for working in a particular area. Let's say in the higher altitudes, so working with clouded leopard, the species is very shy and very less in population. So if the data of one institute is being shared with another institute, which is working on that particular area, but with a different perspective, will help the all the institutes which are currently working in that particular area, right? So that is one of my observation, and also joint ventures between the institutes that will certainly help us. And basically, these are my observations that I have noticed.
Great. So I think we started off with the discussion talking about technology, and Seema brought in a very interesting angle of integrating what we already know, and Shubham is supporting it by saying that how institutions can act as a bridge and try and translate those technologies by giving the local community data, facts, figures to use as a touchstone and say that, this is how your efforts are getting measured or quantified, and that's why you should keep on using a particular technology or a new reform that we have introduced. On that note, I think I will bring in Dr. Joydeep. And Dr. Joydeep, been wanting to ask that what are the latest technological innovations in the field of climate change and conservation, and how have they impacted local biodiversity in your experience of working in the US as well as in India? And it would be lovely to hear some personal anecdotes or, on ground experiences that you would like to share with our audience where there's a learning or two.
Sure. Thank you so much, Reva. And before I move on to answering the question, if it is okay, I would want to jump onto what Shubham said and touch 2 points that
Sure,
he
sure,
mentioned, which are
definitely.
very important. And Shubham, I'm so glad you brought that up. Working in two different countries, I've faced this. So one thing that I've always thought is what you mentioned. Data sharing is almost absent in India. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm an Indian. I'm still an Indian citizen. But it is extremely pathetic because in my own experience working here in India, I've always found that people tend to put collect the data and put it in a bank locker. It's almost impossible. I mean, I was thinking of getting very basic data of rainfall, temperature, just abiotic variables, and nobody wants to share the data. So that is something, I think it's a culture, and I'm very optimistic it will change with the new generation of scientists such as, you all here. I'm very optimistic that this is a hurdle that we will cross over because our strength lies in cross-disciplinary work. I have just realized that because as I went from being a hardcore field biologist or a field ecologist into more AI, who knew that I will have to learn Python and code in Python? So now I'm, one literally I did this. One Christmas break, I just told my wife that I need to learn Python. Of course, I've been using multiple, software for analysis, but I just thought that I can't. How long can I, YouTube it? I can't. I need to actually learn. So literally over a Christmas break, I had to learn coding in Python. So again, I think Shubham mentions this in a very nice way that I think the strength of all of these lies with all this technology, because we cannot be masters of everything. For example, which I'll get into in a second when I answer the question that Reva asked. When I get into that, I'll just show you that, or I'll just discuss how difficult it is for an ecologist or a biologist to understand the spectral signature variations, right? So I think, Subham, you brought out some really interesting facts, and I'm hopeful. And again, another thing that you mentioned, which I also found is an impediment, is we are always resistant towards new technology. There is always a pushback when you say, I need this. And I want to share this with you that we're all in the same boat. When I write for a grant, the first thing, within the internal review, they say that, why do you need this? Is so expensive. I said that, well, do you want good science or just okay science? And then there's a pause and then they sign off on the paperwork, right? So I think there is that resistance, and I think this is going to be wherever you go. Recently, I was in FRI, Forest Research Institute in Dehradun, and I was talking to some scientists, their colleagues who say the same thing. So I think this is universal, but I think we're also at a point because of the flooding of technology amidst us that we are seeing that there's really a bright side to it. Yes, there is an initial investment, right? There's an initial investment to purchase an equipment, to maintain the equipment, but the leverage, the mileage we get out of it is so immense. So I made an argument saying that, okay, why do I want a drone? Here's the reason. I take two of my graduate students, go out in the woods or the forest, and use 15 days of solid 8-hour days field research, come back and get the data. Very good data. How about I just tell you that I fly a drone for 2 hours and I get the same data? So I think once you start putting this forward, you can say that, okay, you know what, the cost of, and especially when I talk to foresters or forest department folks, that is how they learn. I say, okay, so you've got a ranger, you've got some field officers, beat officers. You send them to look at the forest status. How many forest patrols do they go to? Calculate, give me the numbers. And then I take the number as, okay, now you're investing. Now multiply that by 5 years. So how much would you invest? So when you do the basic math, something that everybody understands, or at least should understand, they really think that, okay, in the long run, if you use modern technologies, I agree that initially it's a big investment, and but in the long run, I think, especially as you mentioned, Shubham, for long-term monitoring. I mean, I don't think that I could ever rethink of visiting the same part of the forest every year. At the same time, I can do that in multiple forests. All of a sudden, my site covers the entire state. It is not just a forest that is, close to my campus. So I think you bring up some very good points, and I believe that I've crossed those hoops, and I strongly know that you will too. I think it's just the push that we have to keep pushing. Yeah, and then once you show the results, I think it'll be very palatable and agreeable to your funding or to partner agencies or to donors, things like that. So coming back to the question that Reva asked is, how have I used different technologies in conservation? So just to kind of bring it forward is, I started using in US we can't call them drones. It's interesting. They don't like, in the academia, we can't call them drones because drones are military drones. They're used for warfare or spying. So we are almost forced to use UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles. So I'll be using them interchangeably just in case. So I started using UAVs about 11 years ago. And then when I first began using UAV, I could not fly a drone. I was not allowed to fly a drone. Let me put it properly. But luckily, there's an aviation department in my university. So to fly a simple DJI drone, you have to be a licensed pilot that flies real planes to fly the drone. So at that point, I was just able to go ahead and collaborate. I said, look, I've got the ideas, you've got the license. How about we kind of collaborate? So I was very, very fortunate. Initially, they thought my ideas were very rogue, like a rogue elephant, Seema. So, where are you going with these ideas? I just said, look, I have got the ideas. I cannot fly because the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration will not let me fly. So after that, the rest is history. We moved on. I then went ahead and developed the drone lab, or the UAV lab, as we call it. To be very specific, let me just focus on a few of the things that I have done in my lab, that I can speak for directly, that has really changed my perception of how ecology can be done, how conservation can be done. So among the UAVs that I have, the first one is we obviously start off with the basic. So, as Shubham was mentioning, that it's cost prohibitive. So initially, I just, the drones that everybody flies in weddings here, I've seen people using, a lot of tourists use, or vloggers use. So I used a very simple drone that had only 3 channels, RGB. And then directly using the RGB, we were able to look at several things. One is, okay, the canopy cover. Back when I was in boots on the ground, we would look at the canopy, we would use hemispherical photographs and look at canopy cover and all of that. But all of a sudden I realized that, wait, just by flying this drone over my forest, I can now get a larger swath of the forest done in a limited time. And then I'm getting a better picture of the forest, because now my area that I'm sampling is huge, as opposed to our typical forest plots. So then I kind of had a graduate student, and I told him that, look, that is all we have. What can we do with the RGB? Then all of a sudden, we were able to develop canopy height model. So now all of a sudden, we were able to model what is the canopy height in our forest. So that was interesting. So then we were able to get DEMs, digital elevation model. So how did the forest floor look like? So once we got the canopy height and once we got the digital elevation model, we subtract the two and we get our tree heights. So, very basic things, but we had to be really innovative. Okay, how do we get this? So initially, the results were very interesting. Then I started, just scrambling for funds. As I need more money. And whenever, you ask for a UAV, people look at you like, are you a kid? Why do you want a UAV? They want to hear some very complicated terminology, like, okay, I want this. Then the funding agency is happy. But when I say I want a UAV, then they're like, what for? So then I wrote for grants, and then I got a multispectral. So with the multispectral, what we did was, we added 2 more bands. So it's a 5-band camera. So we have the regular RGB, red, green, and blue. And then we added red edge and then near infrared. So you'll not believe how much of a change that was from just RGB. Because using RGB, we could look at the basic canopy features. But now using the multispectral, we were able to look at stress. And that has always been a focus because with climate change, climate patterns or weather patterns locally have become very, very erratic. So in Louisiana, for example, we have had unusually warm summers over the past at least 4 years now. So we are seeing large oak trees, right, that are the diameter of about maybe 30 centimeters or 40 centimeters, just die like that, just dead. In the middle of the forest, those trees are dead. So what we went back and did was we GPS marked where the dead trees are, and then we flew whatever images we had collected using multispectral. We overlaid the two and we saw something phenomenal. So we had flown the multispectral drone several months before the trees were found dead. But then when we false colored it with stress as an indicator, NDVI, NDRE, we used all of these matrices, all of these indexes or indices. And we found out that when you overlay the imagery of the dead trees and the multispectral, you actually get a signature of the plant telling you I am sick months before it dies. So when me and my grad students found that out, we were overwhelmed. We were excited, overwhelmed at the same time. This is very interesting that before the trees die, they actually give out a signature that I'm not healthy. It's almost like, an analogous to us having a fever before we fall really sick, that I'm not feeling well. So trees are actually sending out the signature. It's a matter of us capturing it. So with 5 bands, I actually got another graduate student and we did something phenomenal. We were able to look at insect damage. So before the insect damage becomes rampant and is visible from under the canopy or the leaves that fall off from the canopy, we used the multispectral drone to see and find out that the tree actually, and again, Shubham, this is, I think, right up your alley, is that physiologically the tree is sending signals that I am not doing well. There is stress. And how beautiful is the fact that we're able to see this stress just using 5 bands way before it happens. So now we're able to delineate, and all of our images are geotagged. So when I say this area is diseased, you can actually take a simple GPS unit and go to that part of the forest and physically look, oh yes, I can see the trees are diseased. So we have been able to do this time and time again. So then I had another idea. So I have seen people talk about hyperspectral imagery. So again, hyperspectral drones are expensive. I'll say that up front. It took me a lot of arm wrestling and writing grants and all of that to get a hyperspectral drone. And the drone that I purchased about 7 years back cost me about close to 70,000 US dollars, including the hyperspectral camera. So when the hyperspectral camera came in, I thought this is the end of the world because now I can tell everything about the forest, right? So what are the things that we could look at? First thing is, even with the RGB, we're able to identify species. So again, coming back to the question that Riva had kind of asked is, how does it impact directly the managers, the people who, the land managers, the forest department, the conservationists? Well, first off, if you look at the species, instead of just telling you that, okay, in my sample plots, we have 7 species or 10 species. Now I can tell in your entire forest, you've got 35 species. And then based on the conservation needs of the wildlife, so we have a wildlife wing that looks at what are the habitat requirements for certain species. So we kind of corroborate, saying that, okay, we know that these trees are there in these areas. So can we conserve? It's very much focused, targeted treatment. Is can we make sure that these areas don't degrade any further? So then they take boots on the ground action, right? So this has been very, very interesting. The next thing that we were able to do using the hyperspectral is really canopy chemistry. So I went from using 5 bands to using 240 bands in the hyperspectral drone. Okay, so the 240 bands actually are all the way from 400 nanometers to 1000 nanometers. So I'm like a kid in a candy store, and I'm having these bandwidth divided into 240 segments. So it's like taking a fine comb and combing your hair really well. Because all of a sudden, instead of using my fingers to comb my hair, I'm using a fine toothed comb. So that opened up a lot of opportunities because now I'm able to look at how much nitrogen is there. So really, forest health, this has been revolutionary. The use of a hyperspectral drone has been revolutionary in forest health because you talk about stress. Trees will always give out signatures via chemistry. So if there's a change in the chemistry on the leaves, your drone will pick it up. If you want to know your chlorophyll content, the health overall, even when the tree is doing well, you can tell what the chlorophyll content is. You can
Which is quite
estimate
interesting
biomass. It is
to
really changed
understand.
the way.
Yeah. And also the kind of impact that it can bring to the
Right.
table. I think that awaits to unfold and that awaits to be seen as and when, there is a 10%, 20% addition or innovation in an already existing technology or in an already existing device, as you have beautifully exemplified, that only in the past 8 to 10 years you have, you've shared examples, you've shared the kind of innovation that has happened and that has only gone on to improvise what we already knew. And I guess, on that note, I would like to bring in Ms. Seema here and have a very different viewpoint and a very different question addressed to her, that what Dr. Joydeep has talked about is very forward looking. What I would want you to bring in, Seema, is how traditional knowledge gives us that sort of impetus to move forward. So there might be something which we already know. So what strategies can we employ to understand the traditional knowledge and have the local communities participate more? And how can scientific research and knowledge be tempered with what already exists? How can that feed into a future-looking plan that's more inclusive, that takes in cues from already existing communities and stakeholders?
Thank you, Reva. I'll first start with what Joydeep was talking about. Sorry, because that was quite fascinating. I'm in that zone at least right now. So what I wanted to talk about, like what Joydeep was saying about, is like this leap forward that has happened from 5 bands to directly 240 bands that he can look into. It's very similar in the kind of work that we also do. Like, how many of us now use ChatGPT? How many of us knew about ChatGPT before? And there's these large language models which were being built for years. OpenAI was being built for years, but now it's open to the public. Like, all of us can use any of these OpenAI tools. And now we are all being very receptive of it. If somebody would have told you some 10 years ago that will you write an email using ChatGPT or something of that sort, you would not trust any of those algorithms. And now, how many of us write emails using that? So that's the power of AI. In some ways, that's the power of AI. And it makes this leapfold transitions that we will not be able to see. Only when it's open to the public and every becomes receptive to it, we'll be able to see. So there will be these jumps that I wanted to say. So that's what is the beauty of AI or the beauty of ML algorithms. And they have these jumps. Now coming to the traditional knowledge, the question that you were asking me about the traditional ecological knowledge. The conflict with traditional ecological knowledge is it's mostly an oral history. It's not in the way that we or most of the Western scientists, the way they think of science as. It's something written,
That's
something
true.
oral, something data driven, and then there is modeling involved into it. None of that is the part of the traditional ecological knowledge. Traditional
It's
ecological
because
knowledge.
I think India has been an oral country, we have oral literature, we have an entire myth just spoken by a blind bard. So I think that's just how knowledge passes on over generations. We have traditional recipes, we have traditional knowledge, we have, even animals becoming live and then stories and fantasies and whatnot. And it's primarily been oral than written, I guess. Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it, correct? Because that's the oral tradition that passed down
Absolutely.
from generations to generations. Now, how are we or anybody else become this bridge between this knowledge that's been passed down from generations and the knowledge that you're gaining into, let's say, a school or any of the other Western way of looking at it. Okay. So most of the strategies that you can think of is, first of all, be receptive of the knowledge. And because wherever they are, that their knowledge has passed down, as you were saying, through generations. And there is a reason behind an X person saying an X thing or a Y thing. Okay, I'm not going to give you an exact example because that's the knowledge that has passed down to, but there are ways for it. Okay. I just put down a story over here, which has happened very close. It has happened in Balipara itself. And I kind of worked there for a while. So I went into a house and we were discussing about a herd of elephants, about 150 individuals, almost coming every day and breaking into certain houses. Okay. And they used to break the house and eat all the remaining food, as well as they used to try and break the house for some particular reason, as well as eat whatever that was this. So in Assam, there is this thing where they stack all the cut crops, the crops that have been cut, they will stack it outside the house. So they used to the elephants used to eat those crops that were stacked outside the houses, as well as they used to eat something maybe like a salt that's kept inside because it helps in digestion. Now there is a woman here standing there and she's explaining the whole scene in complete detail to me. Like, there are these elephants that come across, they do this, they do that, everything. And here I am as a researcher thinking, why do these individuals have to do this aghast thing? That's like, so, like, I was so taken aback. And then on top of it, this woman never even uttered the word elephants once. She always kept referring to Ganesh Baba. And that's the only reason that elephants or any large mammals survive in a country like India. That's the oral tradition that has been passed down to for years and years. And that's how. So when you give them technology solutions, please integrate that into them, that when they are referring them as gods or they are referring them as uh, any individuals or like something like a supreme power to them, and that's the strength that they're gaining from, or that's what is helping them keep afloat, just try and bring the technology in such a way that it helps them in, but it does not break down this tradition that they have. Like, let's say I say, okay, there's a technology, you can use it to chase all the elephants away, and will you use it? Great enough. But if you say there is a technology will shoot at the elephants, will they use it? Will they use it? I don't think most people in Assam would be very willing to use kind of technology like that, even if there are gunshots sounds that have been fired in the audio recording, if there are even gunshots that have been routinely fired, I don't think most people are willing to use that kind of technology as well. So we did that in Kaziranga and we asked people what will be the sounds that we are looking at if we are using. So I'll just explain the whole technology development and how the communities can be part of it. Okay. So what we're trying to build is this human wildlife conflict mitigation box kind of a thing, or a detector kind of a thing, in where if an elephant comes and if it makes a vocalization, it can hear, the detector will hear it, and the elephant is in the area, and the local communities can be made aware of it. It's like an early warning system. And then there is a deterrent part of it. So there, where the sounds will be played around in such a way, in a round robin manner, that the elephants move away from the area. And there can be bee sounds, there can be any of the other sounds. And these sounds, when you're bringing into picture, they should be along to align with what the tradition has been. Is it the tradition has been of banging? They do a lot of banging on the thalis, which we call thalis, or there is some firecrackers that they burst. So that kind of using tradition as well as technology together is what I'm looking at. And that's what I would want to talk about. The second point, yes. And also the most important is make them the custodians of the technology. Like, literally any technology, if they have, make them the custodians of it. I think from where Joydeep comes into picture, his work with communities will be very different to working in Assam with communities. So that custodian part might not come into your play that much because you work with forest landscapes and it's it's very different because you look at the health of the forest, which is very important on that matter. And now I'm looking at the integrity into it, how within the forest itself or within the whole communities that live within the forest or outside the forest, how can we mitigate this conflict that happens on day-to-day basis? And most important, and I just would end in this, is don't be extractive of tech. Like, don't take all the knowledge, the traditional ecological knowledge that they have, and just write a paper about it and go away. That's what most of this, like, there is this whole Western science doing it, which we call it as parachute science. Don't be that person. Like, the knowledge that they have, use it in a very conducive manner and make the community as well as the part of that knowledge. And don't be at all extractive. Thank you.
So I think, beautifully concluded, Seema. The examples that you have given and the methodologies that you have enlisted as to how this integration can happen more seamlessly, and why it becomes extremely critical to make people the custodians of technology. Shubham, I would like for you to take a question that has come to us from the audience, that how can we make technology accessible to communities? They have also talked about the cost factors that are, of course, understandable and that are involved. And then they say that there's a need for our communities to be aware, first of all, of new technology. And sometimes there's a gap in the kind of technology that's being built in a lab and what's happening on ground. So, any comments on that, Shubham, and especially the grants part that you'd already talked about previously in the session?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Regarding that, I would like to say one thing that yes, they need to be aware of those technologies. They need to use those technologies, and the most affordable technology that you can have is this one. It has got your camera, right? It has got the GPS, and it has also internet. So there was one workshop that we did in collaboration with renowned photographer, fungi photographer Steve Expert back in 2023. What we did, we held workshops in Balipara and Rupa. Sorry, in Zero. Where we just held a workshop with the students and the community members. So in that particular workshop, we made aware of the technology that they can have with the mobile devices, the documentation of fungi and its identification, and how to document those fungi and other species that they may come across during the observations, during their day-to-day observations, and subsequently upload it to the iNaturalist portal so that the experts can have a look and identify all those species there. So, but what I want to say is they do have at least this basic tech, and they need to be made aware of those technologies, of how to use that technology. Using workshops is the best way we can make them aware of how to use this technology. And yes, I think if the fungi can be documented, then other species can also be documented very well in a particular region or in a particular landscape when the community is involved, right? So yes, they can start with the very basic, and also when their interest grows, obviously they can join hands with the local NGOs that they are working in the particular area. So I think that is the that's where I want to conclude with this question.
I would invite the audience, if they have any more questions, we can definitely take that up, or we can proceed towards conclusive remarks. Are there any more questions from the audience? Is there anything that you would like to know from our esteemed panelists today? So I think let's start towards a conclusion, which is more of a discussion on whatever we've talked about so far, and at the end of the day, it has to be about inclusivity, innovation, and of course, as Shubham said, affordability as well, because that becomes crucial to joining these two dots. Dr. Joydeep, any final words from you, and how did you like today's session and the kind of thoughts that have come in? Some were challenging, some were difficult to answer. However, at the end of the day, I think all of us are moving towards a direction of conservation with a scientific temper. So, yeah, any final words from you on this theme today?
Well, thank you so much again for the question. And I think, meetings, conferences, talks like these are really instrumental. And again, a lot of kudos to Balipara Foundation for doing this. And, unless we get the word out, I think it'll be only in a vessel, it'll be echo chamber where a bunch of nerds get together and talk the lingo and walk the walk, and the thing never escapes the vessel. So I think things like these, where we can engage the youth, I think my main effort, or my main thrust, is to be able to really corral the youth in saying that, look, I'm not protecting the forest for me. I'm protecting the forest for you and your future generations, right? So I think this is something that, excuse me, that gets easily translated. So, as they say, that ecologists are very, very optimistic. And I think, along those lines, we are very optimistic that the whole transboundary movement of technology into field, into the user's hand. And we have seen several evidences in the past as citizen science has done it. And in the US, citizen science is big. And here, I'm seeing citizen science has grown and catapulted in several aspects. So I think, as Subham did mention, that if you have a cell phone, it really is all you need. You have GPS location, you're geotagging your photographs, you have a place to record whatever observations you see, just do an audio recording and then take a photograph. So those are phenomenal. So in terms of cost, yes, while technologies, arrive on our table, they are typically expensive. We all remember how expensive it was to buy our first desktop computer. At least I'm old enough to remember that it was an arm and a leg to just buy one computer, right? And then, so things have changed again. With the recent advances, prices have dropped down. Drone prices are coming down. Technological, all these gadgets. And again, I think with what Seema was talking about, I just want to kind of tease the hair there a little bit, just to make sure that I personally also understand what she was referring to. Because I think technology is one thing and device is another thing. So for example, technology in my case is something that I develop in the lab. That is what I do, the coding, all of that. And then at the end of the day, the device is something that perhaps, as Seema was talking, is an audio device that you put something with sensor that senses. So, just kind of trying to cross thread all of these is to see how we can use indigenous knowledge, which we have in India quite a bit, and use those knowledge to integrate. Because what I'm seeing is there's the anecdotal aspect of it, and then there is the science aspect of it. So for me, I think it's a little difficult to imagine how would you integrate something that is indigenous traditional knowledge directly into the technology. I can very easily convince that, okay, this is a technology, that this is a device that you all own. The village owns this device. And then this device will, save your crop depredation. There'll be less crop depredation by elephants. So I think at the end of the day, technology will move on. It is how I think a lot depends in our hands, right? And I'm sure my panelists, here will agree that it is really a lot rests on our shoulders as to how we really bring this into making sure that at the end, the user end is as happy as the end that actually brings the technology forward. Thank you.
No, I think beautifully you summed it up, and definitely there has to be some way of incorporating the human element with what is being produced and what is being created in silo in a lab. And Seema, I would like for you to take over from there and conclude as to how indigenous communities will continue to play a pivotal role, and with agility and with a scientific temper coming in the coming years, the scientific community as well as the traditional communities can work hand in glove towards conservation efforts.
Thank you, Reva. What Jaideep was talking about was technology and device. There are two different things. I completely agree on that. I was talking about the device part. At least in the device part, there can be the integration of the community angle to it. You can't, from the technology point of view, there is a lot more. There is ML models that go behind, there is AI that happens behind, there are a lot more other things that happen. There's an integration that has to happen with that. So I completely agree on that note, that integration of the community in the whole technology part of it might not happen, might never happen. Okay. But at least from the point of view of indigenous communities, from the device point of view, or the location where the devices are kept, or who is going to be the custodian within the village, what is, if all of those decisions are taken by them and not by us. That's what
Absolutely.
that's what I was getting into.
Right.
Also, from the inception point of view, is what are the kind of devices would you like? Should it have a camera? Should it not have a camera? Should we develop something with acoustics only? Should we develop, what is the angle that you look at? What is the target species that you're looking at? Which is the major conflict that's happening because of which target species? All these questions should come from the community. That's what I was looking at. And that's when I say, from the inception of any technology, it can rotate all like 360-degree. I've always been of an opinion, even working on the technology part of it, that technology is not the final solution for conservation. And it can never. It will be always be a medium to do conservation. It will always be a helper, or like something that we increase to help better conservation, better knowledge of the forest, like as we are saying, but it can never be the solution for conservation. That was my opinion. Is it will always be like, you still have to, like, it's something very similar in chat GPT itself. You still have to put in information to tell what email you want to write, correct? That's what it'll just help you write better emails, but it can't write you an email, or it can't write you anything else like that. So it's very similar is the role of this technology that we're talking about. From the conservation point of view, it will tell us that if a species is declining, what is happening within the health of the forest, all of that information. But with that information, what action are we taking as humans is what will actually play the role. And what Shubham was talking about is the cost of technology do coming down. Yes, I completely agree. In the coming years, it will come down. Things will become more open to people. It will come down drastically. It will be like that. Hopefully it should be like that. And new technology, I think it is happening every week, 15 days, 1 month, 2 months. There is new AI or new Python codes coming in, new models developed. It is that new, and it will keep happening. But how are we going to integrate within the communities is also going to play a pivotal role.
Absolutely. No, I think at the end of the day, it's not just thought, it's about action as well. And only we as humans will be in a position to take actions to the best of data sets that, technologists might curate. Moving on to Shubham, I would like for you to reiterate the role of institutions, government bodies, and the social sector.
Yeah, I think the role that the institutes play are very crucial because they are the pioneers of research and development. Right. So having an integrated approach, having a collaborative approach with the conservations, with the organization that are doing conservation on ground will significantly enhance the level of understanding the communities, of understanding the forests, of understanding the technologies. It'll play a crucial role. Only the thing is, we need to build an environment of collaboration and data sharing, so that the sole beneficiary of those technologies, of those research is the nature only. So yes, there are some hurdles in that. Basically, some of the policies that don't allow the sharing of the data, and obviously some of the data are confidential and needs to be maintained within the institute. But wherever possible, the sharing of the data needs to be mandatory from the policy
In
perspective,
order for the
and also
collaboration to happen.
yes, and
Yes,
also
that's
yes. So that is basically what I want to say regarding the facets of the institutions and the implementing agency.
Thank you so much, Shubham, Dr. Joydeep, and Seema. I think it was a very insightful discussion that talked about contradictions as well as conclusions, and possibly, some positive change and impact in the near future on marrying technology, traditional knowledge, bringing in institutional knowledge, and making everyone's lives easier towards moving towards this, this common goal of conservation. And I think Balipara Foundation has also been playing one key and instrumental role in facilitating that sort of knowledge sharing and introducing new technology into already existing traditional community-based knowledge sets. And on that note, Nayanika, I would hand over back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So, dear speakers, with this, I would like to close the discussion today. Thank you so much for your insights and for bringing in such a diverse set of case stories from your field experiences and beyond for us to relate to. This has been a very sort of enriching discussion, I would say, and I will be sending out a report stating the set of recommendations and the highlights and learnings from this session. And I would request all of you to send your feedback on it. And thank you so much for joining in. And yes, hope to be a part of more such collaborations with you in the near future. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nayanika.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Reva, for such a nice, your moderation today and for summing it up so well, like the whole concept of the session and everything. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.